Hello, everybody. My name is Terry Art. I am the president of College Transition Publishing. I want to welcome you to our webcast today with Stephanie Williams, one of our authors who will be talking about online students and achieving success. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping items. We have muted all the phones that allow us to streamline through this program quickly and efficiently without interruptions. But I do want to encourage you as we're participating, asking questions and doing our dialogue. If you do have a question, there is a little box at the bottom of your screen. Please utilize that and post your questions. And throughout the program, I will ping those and make sure that we're addressing as many of those as possible. If we don't get to them all, we will make sure we follow up individually with you to address each of your questions. We will be doing a recording of the program, so afterwards, if you're interested in reviewing it or sharing this with your colleagues, I will have a follow-up email with a link where you can watch it at your leisure. In addition, any kind of references we make to products, services, or highlights that Stephanie or I talk about, we'll be sure to include those in the follow-up email as well, so that you'll have access to that information too. So it looks like we have everything in order. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, I'd like to introduce Stephanie. Stephanie, how are you today?
Hi, Terry. I'm doing great. I am loving the cold weather here in Southern Arizona.
It's funny. We talked about that before, and yeah, it's amazing how the temperature variances and where you think it would be hot or not so hot sometimes. So, well, I'm glad you're able to join us today and you got home safely. For those who don't know, Stephanie serves as an instructional designer at Cochise College, and she's written a book for us recently. And I don't have a copy because I gave my last one away, but I have a print off. It's called Life During College, the Online Learner's Guide to Success. So we'll be talking about that book throughout today's program. And yeah, so I know a lot of people who have been able to join on today have been in communication with me via email leading up to this program and learned a bit about your story, how you got involved with education, and then lead right into this online component as an instructional designer and then up to the book. So there are a few people who have not been able to join or participate in that, but are on today's program. So I was hoping, Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind, just take a couple of minutes and give us the highlights of the story. How'd you get involved with education, and then what led you to take the role in an online education program?
Wow, Terry, only a couple of minutes. Yeah, the story of me getting into education is actually interesting because it wasn't what I had set out to do. I come from a family of educators, so you'd think that would have been a natural path for me, and I did everything I could possibly think of not to go into either education or counseling. My mom taught math and then taught adult ed courses. My dad teaches at the community college level and at the university level. My grandmother taught preschool. My uncle taught while he was living at the elementary and middle school level, and even at high school level. So I had all of these teachers around me. And I said, you know what, that's a lot of work. I know you get summers off, but you always have a stack of grading. I don't want to do it. So, and my dad's also a counselor. And I said, I don't want to be a counselor. But I started a job right after college, and I actually majored in public administration and healthcare administration. And you know, you graduate and you go home and your parents are like, get off my couch and get a job. So that's what I did. And my first job was at University of Phoenix, and I guess was really successful at it and was promoted to trainer. And I loved training. I loved it so much. And I, you know, bonded with my trainees, and they thought I was a good instructor. And I, you know, small trainings, 1 or 2 people, to large ones of like 100 people. And I loved every minute of it. So when I finished my master's degree, I started teaching online. And I realized that online learning could open up a world for people who were working full time. And people who couldn't, quit a job because they wanted to go back to school. They had children to support or bills to pay or whatever. And it was just a really good opportunity. And I had students all over the world, and students with disabilities, students in Argentina, students who were English language learners, and they all benefited from an online education. And I fell in love with education because of that. So I started talking to my dad and my uncle, because now we were all teachers. And they'd tell me the stories about the students who they worked really closely with. Because, as an online instructor, you don't get to see your students, but teaching face-to-face, you develop bonds quicker. And they'd tell me about students who wanted to take more classes but couldn't because they had to be home with their kids, or students who were in high school and didn't think they'd ever be able to go to college because they had to get a job. And, I said, well, what about online? So it was an interesting experience for me to talk to them about these things and hear stories from, all different levels of education, and hear how inspiring teachers are. Because, as a kid, and I know, especially for me as a kid, I didn't think about teachers, at least not my parents and my uncle, as being inspirations to other students. They were the people who gave us homework. Yeah. But it turns out that it's a huge responsibility. And I look up to the teachers who I had, and I hope that I can inspire some of the students I've had and will have in the future. So with that being said, that's how I got into education.
Wow. So tell me, for people who may not be aware, in your role as an instructional designer, what's that? What is it? What do you do at Cochise?
I tell people it's like being on the production team of a film, of whatever your favorite movie. Like, pick your favorite movie and imagine being on the production side of that and learning all of the ins and outs of how it was made. And because I fell in love with education, and a lot of people love film, it's an easy equation, because I get to see how your online courses are developed. I develop them. We, meaning myself and our subject matter experts who are faculty members, work closely to pick out textbooks, to pick out online resources, to pick out assignments and develop assignments, and put all of those into the online classroom. So there's also the more technical side of that, which goes into instructional learning theory and adult learning theory, and all of those big words that are kind of, I guess, triggers now, like asynchronous learning and synchronous learning and those things. But the fun part about it is looking, for me at least, looking at textbooks and looking at the resources that come with those textbooks, and developing interactions for students to take tests, or to do a drag and drop activity, or matching activities, or even a full case study or simulation.
Good. Well, it reminds me, as you're talking about this, and as I'm learning about the online community, it reminds me back to when you first contacted me, and that was roughly a year ago. And at the time, I'm not sure if you'd gotten a copy of my product, the Lectern College book, or what it was, but do you remember that conversation, reaching out to me?
I remember that conversation. I was looking for a textbook for a new student orientation for online students. And I got a directive from my dean, and he said, go forth and find a book for an orientation. And then a few minutes later, he comes back and he says, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you the good part. It needs to be low cost or free, and it can't be too long. So I said, great, I'll do that. And I ran across your book, and I saw that you had just released the web app, and I said, great, it's going to be available electronically. And then I said, okay, let's look at how much it costs. And I said, well, it's low cost, which is even better. And it looks like they're doing something with funding or advertisements in the book for customization. You can help reduce the cost of students. And I said, even better, I have to contact them. And so when I was going through the book, I was looking at, the sample chapter, read that, and decided, well, I really needed to be focused for online students. And I dropped you a line in the little comment section and said, hey, this is a great book. I love it. I love the web app. Do you have anything coming out for online students? And I got an email from you that said, that's an amazing idea. Would you like to work with us?
And it was. And in fact, that it was a topic, and it had been on I have a little whiteboard in my office, a hot list, things to think about, new products for development. And that had been on my list for a couple years. And so when I got your email, and we had talked a little bit briefly about, the existing product, and you'd said, really, the online learners, a different, audience, and, the foundations there, but would it be possible to create something specifically for that audience? And so we went back and forth. You gave me some stats, told me about the audience, the market, and the demand for something like that, low cost, inexpensive, something that could be added to an existing program. And I said, you know what, Stephanie, this is great. Here's a contract. Would you sign this and go ahead and help me write this book? And lo and behold, you did. You took on the challenge, and I know it was a little bit tough this year, getting through all the different pieces and parts with everything else. I mean, when you consider all the work that you're doing at your school and personal life, it's tough to add in writing a book. And but I'm proud to have that book now in our collection, and it's now launched, and it's available as a print as well as online. So congratulations. I'm glad that worked out. So I wanted to go over, I realized the book's new, and you were given this task of creating and coming up with a program. What is your program at Cochise right now? What are you guys doing for orientation or first year experience classes?
That is a varied question, because there is, your traditional new student orientation, and it's optional, and it was developed and is geared towards face-to-face students. So any student who we have now has the option of going through a new student orientation, where you usually meet with a student ambassador and are walked around to different places and talk to the advisors and learn where the library is and that sort of thing. Well, online students, or even students who can't make that scheduled time during our open hours for the orientation, don't really have that opportunity. Right now, the only thing we have available is a video, which just kind of gives them a rundown of the same resources and where to find things, and an overview of, professional development and financial aid opportunities and that sort of thing. But recently, we are trying to move towards a full course requirement. So not just the optional orientation, but a requirement for all students who test into developmental reading to go through a 3-credit orientation, which covers pretty much what we discuss in our book. Financial aid, career success, study skills, learning styles, stress management, even financial management, in addition to just your college financial aid. So that's what we're moving towards now, and that program is probably going to kick off in the next month or so.
Okay. Well, I know, visiting with, as conference season is kicked off, and now I have this book in my portfolio, and going to online learning community programmings and visiting with instructors, instructional designers, etc., that come up to me and they're intrigued by the book, and I ask the question, I'm like, do you have a first year experience program or some kind of an orientation event? And they kind of grunt and groan. They're like, it's been on our list. We want to do it. One, there's no money. Who's going to manage it? All those questions that any school would have when it's like, we want to do something new. And I hear it in their voice, just like when, you're so motivated about this seeing your students succeed, and the same message and the same feeling comes from all these people I visit with. The challenge they have is that, they don't have the time, they don't have the money, and sometimes they don't have the support of the organization's leadership to show them that, that they view that as an important component of the overall picture. So I guess the question to you is, if someone's in that position, if maybe leadership said, hey, we need to get something going, maybe they watch this webinar and they're excited and they go back to their campus and they pick someone and say, start a first-year experience program. We want some kind of orientation that's required. But it's not as easy as that. What would be the first step? What's the first thing, if someone's given that task, that you would suggest to them that they need to do?
The first thing I would suggest to do is to get buy-in. Get buy-in, get buy-in, get buy-in, and get support of the faculty members. So you just, like with any new release of any piece of technology, for example, you have your early adopters. So you're going to want to get those people who are like-minded, who are passionate about education and the first year experience, to say, well, how about we develop this course? And some faculty members probably don't want to take it on individually, but if you can get a team of 3 or 4 people together and develop a course together, then it takes some of the weight off of it. And I think in your example, leadership was already on board. That's the best place to start because you already have their backing and support. If you're just a faculty member and you don't know if leadership's going to be on board, put together a proposal and present it to them and say, hey, this is why we need this. Run data on test scores, on how many students are testing in the developmental courses, or students are first-year students, or first in the family to go to college. And those are probably going to be your target populations. And most schools will have a higher number in at least one of those areas. So you can take that data to your leadership and say, hey, look, this is what we're finding, and I think that this will help these students.
Okay. So it's very similar to brick and mortar school, if you want to consider that quote unquote traditional, but some of the conversations I have with them is like, all right, identify that group of students that you want to target and find out why, have a measure of success. How do you measure, maybe it's retention rate, maybe it's graduation rate, accomplishment, and say, we need to increase these numbers and here's how we're going to do it. And we're going to implement this and we're going to measure those same indicators and see what the success program is. But I remember 14 years ago when I first introduced our first Life During College book, it was the movement of colleges to go to a required first year experience course had just really started to launch off. And here it is 15 years later, and it's hard to find a school that doesn't have a first year experience type program on it because everybody's seeing the success of it. So I'm anxious to see how this, as online courses develop and online programming develop, how they implement the same kind of program in theirs as well. I do have a few questions that are coming up. In fact, I want to jump onto some of these as we move forward. So you mentioned your program on campus. How is that funded? Is it part of a fee that students pay, or is there a grant, or how's that paid for?
It's paid for through the usual budget process, at least with the face-to-face students. The new program will be paid for pretty much in the same way. It's allocated through the annual budget. We did not get a grant for it, but it'll be interesting to see what we can get done as far as working with the online population. Because one of the other things that I was working on when, like I said, how we hooked up is looking for a resource for our online population of students. So we already had everything in place, which was the benefit, is we already have a learning management system. We already have a virtual campus, per se, division or department that could support it. So it was really just doing the work, putting it together and releasing it to students. So that would be the next step.
Okay. The other question I have here is kind of related to this is, what was the approval process needed to get the class established?
The approval process it follows the same as any other course requirement. It goes through our curriculum committee. It goes through those approvals, and our dean of instruction has to sign off on it. And then it is added to the catalog and the schedule. The other part that we're looking at now is who's going to be credentialed, faculty at least, which faculty members are going to be credentialed to teach it. So that's going to be interesting because it's an area of, it's not, it's not a math class, so it's not like you need a master's in mathematics to teach it, but do you need a master's in education to teach it or a master's in counseling to teach it? So we want to make sure that we find the right faculty members to engage students and to teach the course.
Good point. Good. Question here about the suggestion on timing and implementation of the course, like the duration. Do you see like how long do you see it being so it's most effective? Is it like an orientation before they get started, maybe during their first semester or a quarter, or is it like an 16 week? What's your suggestion based on your experience in working in this area?
I think the sooner students get into the course, the better. So as far as their academic career, if they can do it within the first year, first semester is probably best, within the first year at least. So that way they can use the skills they learn in the course throughout college. So if they're having a problem with study skills, you want to get those study skills to them as soon as possible so they don't fail too many courses or fail too many tests. As far as the length of the actual course, it can be 8 weeks, it can be 16 weeks, or it can be an orientation. The book is only 26 really short chapters. We get in there and give them the meat and potatoes of it and eliminated the fluff. So it's going to be a quick read and they're going to be able to focus in on exactly what they need. So it's going to be up to the instructor to decide how much time or how much focus they want to put on each of those chapters.
Okay. I see a couple of questions in here about the book specifically, and we'll get to those in a moment. I want to really kind of focus in more on the development of program, because I know that's a big question for a lot of people, is creating this first year experience or an orientation program for their students and how to do it. So back on that topic, as you're developing yours, what's your measure of success? How do you determining, we implemented this, we put this program together, we have a course for this group of students or for all students. How are you guys measuring that success, or in your visits with other schools that are doing it? What are they doing, similar measures? And what is that tool that they're using to see if the program's a successful program?
Well, it's going to depend on what your original purpose was. And for ours, it's going to be getting students into English 101. And so what we'll look at is the completion grades for English 101, the number of students coming out of our orientation course, and then obviously reading, and then how they do in the reading course, and then the English 101 course. And we have an assessment process too. So we'll look at the assessment for those courses as well. And the idea being that our baseline is the grades and the performance before the orientation course, and then looking at the data that we get after we've implemented the orientation course, obviously hoping that it's better.
And so, with that, it's like, so, you won't see it immediately. So you're following these students for the duration of their time on as a student and seeing, right, here's what our rates were before, we implemented this. Now we're going to follow it, but you might not see those results for another semester, another year, et cetera, right?
Right. What we're talking about is really program evaluation. So it's going to be 1 to 2 years, or maybe even a little longer, before you can really tell how effective it is.
Okay, good. Now, I know one thing I mentioned or failed to mention earlier is when we talked about writing this book, and I said, hey, can you help me and develop a guide for online educators and students? You said you would, but an important component of that was supporting the faculty and staff that are involved with that to ensure that they're getting the resources and information in order to ensure that student is successful. And so I said, that's great. I'd love to be able to produce some of that information. Again, going back to you and say, can you help me with it? And so one of those was your white paper you recently produced, which is called Online Learning, Is It Right for You? And really, I see this as kind of being a component where an online educator, maybe a campus where a student comes in and they have a traditional brick and mortar campus and they have an online campus and the student's just not sure. Or like you said, maybe it's a situation like your parents or your family members who are teaching students and they're just like, look, I can't go to college, I have to work. And they bring up, I see this white paper as being something that they can use as a resource to hand to a student. Is that the way you see it as well?
That's absolutely the way I see it. It will help guide a student's decision-making process because they've already made the decision, or at least are leaning towards going to college, but is online learning right for them, or are face-to-face courses right for them, or even a combination of both? That's another option that students don't always see right off the bat is, well, maybe I can make 1 or 2 night classes, but maybe I can also take 1 or 2 online classes. So there's that whole other option that students have.
Great. And I see some people asking, like, how do I get a copy? And just I mentioned at the beginning, I want to make sure I send off an email afterwards that's going to have a link to that so everybody on today's program can get a download that PDF so they can have a use of it. And please use it freely. It is a PDF version, so put it on your different accounts, send it out as emails, but encourage you all to, if you like how she presented that white paper, to share it out there. So I'll get you a link on that one. The other thing, you're currently working on another white paper, and that one's titled, same as your book, Life During College, The Online Learner's Guide to Success. Can you describe what's going to be included in this white paper?
This one's going to be a fun one. If the first white paper is kind of an introduction and a decision, the second one jumps right into the book content. It's almost a summary or checklist of the greatest hits in the book. So yeah, we'll look at the study skills. There's a special section in the book for military students, so we'll touch a little bit on that in the white paper. There are some tips and tricks for students on successfully participating in an online classroom. Participation is huge. I was just talking to a colleague and we were drafting some verbiage for a lesson for training faculty, and he mentioned that forum participation is basically the foundation of an online class. And I said, you know what, that's a really good point, because that's how you talk to each other. And we have examples of that in the textbook. So I really want to look at that in the white paper as well.
Good, great. So again, in that one, once that's released, I'll be sure to, excuse me, get an email out to everybody, letting them know where to get the copy of that one as well. Now I realize there's more and more questions coming up about the book, which is awesome. People asking about what's in it, you said, I showed a picture, but there's 26 chapters. You hit on some of those things. What's the scope? What's the overall lay of the book? I know you talk about academic success. What are some of the other components that are inside the book?
Well, I know when we were writing it, I sent you this email and I said, Terry, can I change around all the chapters? And you said, yeah, sure. If you think that if the layout could use some improvement, go ahead and do that. And we had already started, and I was a little hesitant because I don't know if this is a good idea, but we're going to go with it. And it turned out beautifully because we start with what students need to know first. So you're a student, you get into class, you want to know how to navigate the online classroom. If you've never taken an online class, you want to know what a learning management system is and how to use it. Well, it's your online classroom. So we start with telling the online student about online learning. So how to navigate your classroom, how to communicate with your classmates and your instructor, how to access materials, the difference between downloads and links, but it's not your basic computer course. So frequently I've seen resources that are basically a how to use a computer instead of a how to navigate the online classroom. So we started with that. So students can get in, read the first couple of chapters and know how to find their way through the classroom, which I find is probably half the battle with new students.
Good. Well, and as you've been talking, I went ahead and put on the screen a link and a picture of the book so that anybody who's on today's program, if you've not seen me at a conference and got a copy of Stephanie's book, I've worked with Stephanie and we made arrangements to make sure that everybody on today's program can get a free downloaded copy of it. So on your screen right now is a link. Just go there, fill out the form. You'll get a copy of the book emailed to you with the link so you can download the PDF version of it. And so that's free. If you want a hard copy, right after you fill out the form and get the link, there'll be a promotional code that you can go, and we're offering a hard copy to be mailed to you, including shipping and handling, for $15. So, so if you're, depending on how you like to read, if you're an online learner, great, there's a PDF for you for free. If you'd like a hard copy, take advantage of that, and we're happy to get that to you as well. So I'll leave that up on the screen. So if you want to take advantage of that, please do. Some other questions about cost, pricing, so I'll go ahead and cover those things. The book retails, if you buy it individually, a single copy, it retails in the $30 range. Certainly if you're looking to buy books, hard copies of it, there's bulk discounts available depending on how you want to buy them, you know, for the program. I have some schools who do that, where they buy the bulk product and hand out the books during an orientation programming, mail it out to their students, whatever it might be. I also have students, or excuse me, customers who want it as added into their learning management system, an online web app. Our goal as a company was always to provide our products at the least expensive prices we can on a per student basis. So our web apps, our target price, depending on quantity, but we can go as low as $1 per student to gain access to all this information. And so if you're interested in you know, adding into your learning management system, and you like what the PDF includes, by all means, please let me know. And I'm happy to get you more information about the online components and getting that into your system in a customized format. And topic on that one, customizing, that's one I know we wanted to make sure we talked about. We have the ability, if you put it into your learning management system, or you utilize our web app service, we customize the book completely to the school. So we can change the name of the school. So it'd be, you know, for example, with Stephanie's school at Cochise, it could be Life During Cochise, Your Guide to Success. We brand the cover, the contents. We can add content into the book as well. A lot of our clients like to add a little app functions on the web app that are direct links to other components. And then we have a chapter in the book called Campus Resources. Those would become hyperlinks. So as a student's reading that chapter, and they learn about the library, the financial aid office, the veterans component, whatever it might be, those would instantly become hyperlinks to your school's resource. So the book becomes very interactive and fits right into your program. Some other questions here, Stephanie, that come up. Is the orientation course at your school required right now?
Right now, it's not. The orientation course is optional. I believe it's optional at probably a lot of colleges right now too. What we're moving towards is that requirement if as a result of placement testing. So at that point, it would be required. If you test into a developmental reading, then you must take the orientation course. So we're trying to set students up for success that way.
Okay. Another question here is one of our viewers is part of a community college / vocational school, and they do have an online component. They're wondering, if the book would be useful in their community college vocational students for use. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I know there's always a reading level question or a student audience question about, well, who's it geared towards? It can be applied to any online learner. It's appropriate for university, for vocational, technical, for community college, at all levels, because one of the things that I looked at when I was writing it was, is this just going to be for any online learner? Or is it going to be for a student who's at a 4-year institution versus maybe even a certificate program? So it would be effective for anybody who's going into basically any part of academia.
Good. Another question here that's come up is this person saying, I have a similar type program that we're kind of launched out, but it's been not so successful. It's not required. Students aren't reading it, even though we as staff faculty encourage them to participate. What are things that you're doing to encourage your students to participate and get involved with the program? Get involved with the program.
Well, that's a funny question, and I laugh because whenever I talk to faculty members, as part of my job as an instructional designer, I work with individual faculty members to redesign their own courses. So I get this question a lot: how do I get students to read? Well, the number one recommendation, and this book is designed to support this, is to have the reading tied to something else that is point-based. So you're almost giving them points for reading, but what you're doing is giving them points for incorporating what they've read. And our book is set up with exercises at the end of each chapter. So if you assign the exercises all or several or one even, then they're kind of forced to read the book to get the points.
Okay, good. Another question that came up here is about the military students. This person says a large portion of our student population are military or veterans, and you mentioned something in your book about veterans and focusing on that. Can you describe that chapter or content a little bit more?
Sure. That chapter is geared towards not just veterans, but veterans and active military. So the chapter will discuss kind of tips for any military student, whether you're active now and stationed overseas, or just finished boot camp, or if you're a veteran and are retired. But it looks at some of the key differences. So who's paying for college? Are you on the GI Bill instead of a Pell Grant? Do you typically set your registration through like Go Army Ed instead of the advising office? And we kind of look at those differences in that chapter.
Okay. And I know that just for me, learning on this whole environment, that I'm surprised, me personally, that the largest population, it seems to me, of online learners is the military and veteran component, to the tune of most schools I've interacted with, anywhere from 30 to 60% of their student body are involved with the military, either in active duty or as veteran students. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. In fact, because of that growth in that area, we've launched a new division of our company called Veteran Transition Publishing, and I'll send some information about that as well. And we produced 2 specific guides in addition to the chapter that we've included in this book, something that you can add to the web app or to your learning management system if you choose our product, is the addition of those other products as well as additional resources for your student military, active duty, or student veterans. One is a career success guide written specifically for the student veteran. The other one is a guide just focused on that transition from a college perspective. So keep those in mind as well, and I'll get you some information on that for those who are participating in today's audience. I see a number of other questions. One I think is a good one to end with. Start wrapping this program up is a good question. Is what's next, Stephanie? What are you planning on doing? Writing new books, creating new programming. What's the
plan? Sleep. No. Yeah, you mentioned it's been a really busy year. Well, obviously, we've talked about the white paper, same title as the book. So that's the next thing that's coming out from me. In addition to that, we are doing a lot of hard work on our new orientation program. So we're, developing it for all students at this point, and then I will probably be doing a version specifically for the online population and our active duty and veteran students. And then following that, I am actually working on some coursework for developmental math.
Okay.
So I talk a lot about development testing and developmental reading. I'm also doing a developmental math program. So it's going to be a busy rest of my year.
Wow. Okay. Well, I see a few other questions coming up specifically about your class and the development of it. And unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time to get into the depth on those. But I'm wondering, Stephanie, would it be possible for some of these people who are, have these questions or others that want to follow up with you and ask questions about, the process, how you got going, how you got this course developed and where you're going? Would you be available? I know you got a busy schedule, but is that something you'd be able to help out with and do some one-on-ones with these people?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for me under Stephanie Williams. You can also find a link to my website on there and see some of the other things that I've done. And as always, you can, ask Terry for more information about me before you contact me if you feel like it.
Great. And what I'll do is, in fact, for audience members, at the end of the program, I'm going to put up a slide that's going to have my contact information as well as Stephanie's for you to access. So you'll have access to that and can write down, again, social media is like LinkedIn, things like that are great ways to connect. But I'll have our email addresses up there as well. But anybody's posted a question we didn't get to, I'll make sure we follow up with you directly as well. So don't worry about that. Other things coming up, I wanted to just highlight, again, take advantage of the book. It's on your screen. I'm not sure I'm pointing this way, but I'm not sure what side it's on your screen. But if you want to download a free copy, please do. It's a great resource. Even if it's something you don't implement into your program, I think you'll learn a lot from it and the content that's involved with it. So please take advantage of that. I'll send you some information about our veteran transition publishing products. So be sure to take advantage of that. And then, yeah, so good content, good information. I appreciate you giving us some time today. Any final remarks that you want to leave the group with, some highlights, some inspirational information to help these guys that participate in our program today take off to the next step?
I am really excited about the book. I hope you are as excited about it as I am. Terry and I love feedback. So as you get it, get the samples, get the book, please let us know what you think. We've already started talking about things to include in the next edition. So it's not too early to give us suggestions about that as well. And I hope you love it.
Great. Thank you very much. And just to follow up, again, the book's available. It is available as a web app or can be included into your learning management system. And again, we strive to keep the costs low. So let me know what you're interested in. Happy to get you some pricing information on that. Take advantage of Stephanie's free book. I know we've agreed to do some more webinars, and the next one's going to be focused more on the specific course and what that would look like. So if you are developing a course, I'll be having another webinar here soon with Stephanie where we talk specifically about how to develop, what content's in it, creating a syllabi, as well as the instructional design of it overall. And then Stephanie, of course, is going to have another white paper out. I'll be sure to send you information about that. After today's program, once it's complete, you'll be getting an email from me that will have a link to the recording of today's event. So if you want to share with some of your colleagues to build that support on campus and say, look what they're doing, we should do something like that, please use it for that purpose and get that information out. And then, of course, any feedback you have on this program or others, or things you think we should include in future product development, by all means, please let us know. Again, this is Terry with College Transition Publishing. I appreciate you joining us today for this program and look forward to serving you here in the future. Thank you.